Press your beans and roll your leaf. Eased on down into your favorite high back chair. Make some time for coffee and cigars, cinema fantastique. Yep, it's been a long time since I've done one of these, and I deleted most of the other videos, so you may not remember how this goes. I get to media late. I'm simply too busy to often see it on time. To give you an idea of how late, my wife has finally convinced me to start watching Babylon 5. Yeah. So many of the movies and television shows that I review, they're past their prime. But then I hit something that wasn't made too long ago. It's just been sitting in my Netflix queue forever, such as what happened to me today. And I feel the need to make a post about it because it was damn awesome. Forgive the audio quality of the recording. I'm having it recorded to my phone. And I'm working without a script because I just saw this piece and I just wanted to talk about it. In English, the title of the film is The Day of the Lord. In Spanish, and my Spanish is still forming, so forgive me if I get the pronunciation wrong, it's Menedez Part 1, Part Uno, maybe. El Dia de Señor, The Day of the Lord, all right? And the movie is an exorcism flick. Now, exorcism flicks have gotten sort of a bad moniker in horror circles because there have been so many knockoffs of them that do them gauchely, right? There was one I saw recently. I believe it's called The Ritual, where just everything about the movie just didn't sit very well with me. And it's hard to talk about exorcism flicks and not compare them to The Exorcist, right? Or to other films in this genre. I think you have to do that with this one. You have to compare it to The Rite, which was released a while ago starring Anthony Hopkins. This movie is very different than The Rite. The Rite also didn't do well critically. You have two different approaches, though, and I think the reason why Menedez Part 1 works better is that it accepts going in that most people don't know anything about this ritual. And because most people don't know anything about this ritual, you have more poetic license with it than The Rite took. Briefly talking about The Rite. The Rite was based in actual incidences the Catholic Church has reported of this phenomenon. And it goes pretty meticulously into the procedure to get accepted to have it done, what the priests go through, how it's actually conducted. It doesn't really start getting far-fetched until the very end of the movie where Hopkins gets possessed by the thing he's trying to get out of this girl. The Rite isn't big on special effects. Neither very much is Menedez, although there are some towards the end. The Rite isn't big on the whole what we would call urban horror aspects that have creeped into our popular culture from this event. Menedez gets into that slightly, but not too much. The Rite tries to walk a path of verisimilitude. Now, comparing Menedez to The Exorcist, all four of them, God. The Exorcist went for, how shall we say this? Shock value. Its attempt was to do things on the screen and to do things with the story that most people had never seen and try to shock the viewer into being afraid. Menedez walks a middle path between these two poles. And because of that, this movie needs to be studied. First, there are only three main actors. That's it. There is a fourth actor that shows up a bit. She plays a woman that the main priest has some unresolved feelings about. And a lot of people read that as romantic, but that's not actually what it is. It's a lot of regret. There is a touch of romance in there, but only because being a priest, he's never had that romantic connection. So, of course, being human, he's somewhat fascinated by it. But mainly, the main thing as you watch the movie, it's very clear. It's regret. In fact, let's talk about the big thing that we see. In all three of these movies I mentioned, The Rite, The Exorcist, and Menedez, regret is the key feature of the main character. And I think that's central to the exorcism storyline, because a lot of what these demons are depicted as doing is causing you to doubt yourself. So the main hero's got to have some regrets. The genius of Menedez is that those regrets come from something not many of us could forgive ourselves for. It's revealed to you, the viewer, that in his time off camera in the beginning, Menedez had been part of an exorcism that had gone wrong, and the young child died. And because of that, he's always doubted himself. He's doubted if he's worthy to be a priest. He's doubted if he's doing the right thing. And this movie takes place shortly after he's been released from jail for that. As I said, the movie's not big on special effects. It largely carries the viewer through a slow-moving, noir, kind of unraveling mystery through the strength of the performances of the actors and the pacing. In fact, going to the noir component, if you were to compare this to, say, something like The Big Sleep, you wouldn't be that far off. Subtle hints that the priest is noticing supernatural activity are spread throughout the film. But you'd have to know a lot about Catholic folklore, not the official dogma of the church, but the folklore around the phenomenon to get them. I remember when I saw the first one of these is when his friend shows up at the front door and Menedez sniffs him and looks at him weirdly. Now, most people write that off as just, well, maybe the guy didn't bathe, maybe there's some drug evident on him. And before he starts speaking about the phenomenon that comes next, when he tells his friend that he thinks his daughter is possessed, that's what I wrote off with too. I thought maybe he smells weed. The guy does look scuzzy. But then as Menedez's friend begins talking about what's going on with his daughter, you realize that that's literally the smell of hell. If you don't know much in medieval folklore, there was an actual belief you could smell brimstone on the possessed. A lot of the folklore that's used comes from the Middle Ages. In fact, they even have an artifact that supposedly is used by the Inquisition that still has the souls of the damned's pain in it. Yeah. Now, Menedez does something, the exorcism rite, that the other movies don't do. Both The Exorcist and The Rite try to follow the church's official ritual on this somewhat closely. The Exorcist follows it better than The Rite follows it better than The Exorcist, as far as reading what passages, how the procedure works. None of that happens in Menedez. In fact, the only thing that really is quote-unquote Christian or Catholic about it is that Menedez has the father of the child reading some biblical passages while he proceeds to perform the exorcism. But this is where we get into the Catholic folklore thing and the genius of Menedez. The genius of Menedez is that, knowing that most people have no knowledge of what this ritual looks like, it decides not to really follow that too closely. Let's tell the story more. And the story idea is simply this. How do you know what you know? How can you prove a supernatural event? And finally, do you have the strength to follow through in your convictions when it's going to cost you everything? After the various signs that we get from Menedez doing a slow interview with the young girl, Raquel, are done, he comes to the conclusion that she is indeed possessed. He has 5 different signs he lists to the father about it, which I won't wreck so you can get them in the movie. And it's woven into the plot very, very slowly, very well done. You can see from the moment she shows up at the doorstep, they're engaged in a game of deception with one another. And just about everything she does until the actual exorcism rite starts could be written off as normal teen behavior. The exorcism scene itself is grueling. It involves Raquel being restrained to a chair and Menedez going medieval on her. And I'm not using that in just the euphemism. Other folklore aspects of this are the fact that she is sitting inside a kind of pentacle with which binds the demon from leaving the room. Again, getting into the folkloric aspects that the church doesn't actually use. And also kind of a nod towards urban horror. You talk about demons, people expect to see a pentacle, which that annoys me for a couple of reasons. The first, the pentacle originally is a Pythagorean symbol representing the harmony of the universe. And second, for a while, Christians actually had adopted the pentacle as a sign of the 5 wounds of Christ. Yes, look it up. This was a Christian icon for several hundred years, even to the point of when Mallory is writing La Morte d'Arthur, he has no problems putting pentacle on Gawain's shield. Right? If you go into the Midwest United States, you'll see certain farms and certain churches that have a pentacle in the window. It was a Christian icon for almost 400 years until some bad movies and some bad fiction, well, the bad fiction first, kind of ruined it for everybody. It's like what happened to the swastika, right? Unfortunately, the exorcism goes wrong. The dad doesn't have the courage to follow through, unlike Menedez, which is excellent because it shows that Menedez, having failed, has now earned the resolve to follow a deed through, whereas the father, having not failed, has never known what he is capable of and how he could fail. And so he falls into this trap of letting the demon go. The demon then proceeds to do some really, really horrible things. Not just physical torture, such as breaking Menedez's fingers, but some really messed up confrontations of the two men's faults, verbally, and a couple of acts upon the men, particularly the restrained father of Raquel, not the father priest, but the father of Raquel, that will make you go, ooh. But if we are talking about a being of pure chaotic evil, D&D reference, this is the kind of thing it would do. Especially if it revels in the torture of people's souls and causing them to have regrets and causing them to feel guilty. Now, ultimately, the good guys win the day. But at the end of the day, the cost is going to be this. While it was free, the demon called the police and said a bunch of stuff about how it was being beaten, tortured, and raped by the two men in the basement. And it did it in the girl's voice, so the police have no reason to suspect anything's amiss. Plus, you have the fact that Menedez has a criminal past. So the cops are coming to get him, and this is Mexico. They're probably coming loaded for bear. So if he survives, which is now not guaranteed, if he survives, he's going to jail. There's no way around that. The last scene you see is Menedez issuing the father and Raquel out to go to the hospital to get her treated. She says to him, thank you, because she remembers everything that's happened. He slumps down in a chair, the phone rings, he picks up the phone, he starts talking to a person on the side of the phone, and you realize throughout the movie, as he has been talking on this phone, that Menedez suffers a kind of hallucination. He hallucinates and has dreams throughout the movies that cause you to doubt his sanity. You realize it's not his sanity now, it's in question. It's where his soul is. His soul may not be fully in his body. Having come close to death a couple of times and having such contact with the paranormal, he doesn't really live in our reality much anymore because the person on the other end of the phone is literally God. As the camera pans down, you see the phone is unconnected. It leaves you to wonder, is he hallucinating the phone call or is God actually talking to him? But then again, you just saw him kick a demon out of a body. Yet, the rational viewer viewing the movie within its own universe would have to conclude, yep, God really is talking to this guy. Yep, it really sucks to be a priest. Yep, he's willing to pay these horrible, horrible costs that most people aren't. But then again, isn't that the Christian icon? Isn't that the whole ministry of Christ? Isn't that the whole death and resurrection story? Right? This movie was fantastic. I can't believe people rated it lower than what it is. I think some of it might be that when Menedez finally takes out the demon, all we see of the demon is one kind of half CGI, half rubber suit thing as it manifests into its quote-unquote true form. And then the camera pans upstairs, and the last thing you see Menedez come upstairs after he's defeated, all bloodied and battered. So you actually get to see some epic anime-style fight. But you know what? That's okay. The demon's confirmed to be real because the dad and the girl both see it. It's not just him having hallucination. Now, you could argue that maybe all three of them are having hallucination, but if so, then you have to explain the things the daughter says while she is possessed by the demon about Menendez's past, because this demon has fought Menendez before. And he didn't tell the daughter anything about it, and there's no way she could have known about it. Again, the movie basically confirms this demon is exactly real. The supernatural does exist. This is not just that ambiguous thing that some movies try to do. Shot for shot, this movie is amazing. Lighting, sound, dialogue, pacing. It deserves a lot more attention than it got. And I sincerely hope that the sequel that it teases, La Bella Muerte, gets made. May not. The first movie, part one, is somewhat old enough. I remember Clay said it was released in 2020. I think so. So the actors may have no desire to return to the roles, and the writer may not be able to find funding. But I ended on this cliffhanger hinting about basically we're going to do something with Lady Death. And that might be interesting to see how this director and writer does that. I'd hate to think that because of the criminal associations with that folk saint, that may be why the movie didn't get made, but that's also a possibility. So if you want a good supernatural fic that's slow-paced and engaging more than scary, much like, say, The Ninth Gate, much like The Right, but done with a bit more action, done with a bit faster pacing, because the movie's short, it's only 93 minutes. This is the movie to watch.